The air was thick with the scent of roasted turkey and unspoken resentments. It was a day meant for gratitude, but for Alara, it became the battlefield where years of silent hurt finally erupted into an earth-shattering truth. For much of her life, Alara, at 28, clung to the belief that family was an unwavering sanctuary. A mother, she thought, stood as a child's staunchest ally, celebrating triumphs and navigating shadows. But life, in its brutal honesty, sometimes reveals that the deepest wounds are inflicted by those closest to us. On a fateful Thanksgiving evening, Alara's mother, Vivian, uttered words that shattered the fragile foundations of their relationship, irrevocably altering Alara's world. To grasp the full weight of that night, one must journey back into the complicated history between Alara and Vivian. Their bond hadn't always been a tangled mess. In Alara's early years, before her father, Arthur, passed when she was 12, their home held a different warmth. Arthur possessed a rare grace, softening Vivian's sharp edges, making their world feel safe and welcoming. But his loss was a seismic shift. Grief, compounded by a sudden, brutal financial struggle, began to twist Vivian. The daily grind, the constant battle to keep them afloat, slowly morphed into a simmering resentment, a toxic tide that, tragically, crashed squarely upon Alara's young shoulders. Alara became a living ledger of Vivian's sacrifices. Each school supply, every doctor's visit, every request for a meager lunch allowance was catalogued as further proof of Alara's cost. The comments began subtly, whispers about the burden of her upkeep, comparisons to other, less demanding children. "If only I didn't have to worry about you," Vivian would sigh. "Maybe I could finally breathe." When illness struck, Vivian's heavy sighs and muttered complaints about mounting bills became as painful as the sickness itself. Alara was determined to rewrite this narrative. She plunged into her studies, fueled by a fierce desire to prove her worth, earning a full scholarship to State University for graphic design. Surely now, she thought, she'll be proud. But even this triumph was met with a dismissive wave. "Lucky you, free schooling," Vivian remarked, "since we couldn't afford it anyway." College became more than an education. It was an escape, a forge where Alara hammered out her skills, fueled by a relentless pursuit of professional excellence. She interned unpaid, studied relentlessly, and graduated with honors. Yet, as she crossed the stage, Vivian was conspicuously absent, claiming work commitments. The post-graduation years were a grueling ascent. The graphic design world was a labyrinth, and Alara navigated freelance gigs, retail shifts, slowly building her portfolio. Home visits during these lean times were punctuated by Vivian's barbed comments. "That expensive education certainly isn't paying off, is it?" But Alara pushed onward. Then, a year ago, everything shifted. She secured a coveted position at a prestigious advertising agency downtown. Within 6 months, a promotion to senior graphic designer brought not just a substantial salary, but a profound sense of financial security. She moved into a beautiful apartment, began saving, and for the first time, felt truly independent. This newfound stability ignited a bold idea. She would host Thanksgiving dinner. She yearned to showcase her success, to finally elicit approval, especially from Vivian. Weeks were spent meticulously planning, sourcing the finest ingredients, preparing every dish from scratch. Her apartment, a sanctuary she had painstakingly created, gleamed with fresh flowers and polished surfaces, her grandmother's treasured china, painstakingly reacquired from an estate sale years ago, gracing the table. The guests that evening were a tapestry of complex family dynamics. Vivian had always lived in the shadow of her older brother, Alaric, a titan in real estate. Uncle Alaric never missed an opportunity to flaunt his achievements, his luxury car, his bespoke suits, his every gesture a subtle declaration of superiority. His wife, Aunt Genevieve, a former teacher, had perfected the art of the passive-aggressive compliment, her sweet smiles thinly veiling cutting remarks. Their daughter, Serafina, Alara's cousin, was the undisputed golden child, married to her high school sweetheart, a mother of 2 adorable children, and teaching at the same school as her mother. In Vivian's eyes, Serafina embodied everything a daughter should be. Then there was Corbin, Uncle Alaric's son, 2 years Alara's junior, still living at home, unable to hold a job, and grappling with a drinking problem everyone conveniently ignored. Yet, in the twisted logic of their family, Corbin's failures were framed as a creative journey, while Alara's successes were dismissed. In the week leading up to the dinner, Vivian's subtle barbs served as ominous precursors. She questioned the adequacy of Alara's apartment, suggested Serafina's more experienced hosting, and wondered aloud if Alara was showing off. Alara, blinded by hope, dismissed these warnings, convinced that once they witnessed her success, the dynamic would finally shift. Her boyfriend, Kalen, who had already witnessed some of these familial exchanges, gently suggested her expectations might be too high. But Alara, desperate for change, insisted this time would be different. Kalen, raised in a loving, supportive family where achievements were celebrated and failures met with gentle encouragement, struggled to comprehend Alara's anxiety, his perspective a bittersweet mirror of what healthy family bonds could be. The eve of Thanksgiving, Alara was consumed by a nervous energy, a blend of hope and dread. She had poured nearly $1,000 into this dinner: organic turkey, meticulously selected wine, handcrafted side dishes, all designed for perfection. Thanksgiving morning dawned crisp and cool, a promise Alara desperately hoped would bring a new beginning. Kalen arrived early, his eyes reflecting a quiet concern as he watched Alara's frantic, meticulous preparations. Uncle Alaric and Aunt Genevieve were the first to arrive, their expressions a study in polite disdain, as if touring a museum exhibit that failed to impress. Alaric immediately assessed Alara's apartment like a property developer, critiquing square footage, questioning the neighborhood's safety. Genevieve's approach was more insidious, her compliments laced with subtle judgments. "How brave of you to choose such bold colors," or "It's so nice you're comfortable with minimalism." Each word implied Alara had somehow missed the mark of proper adult living. The true spectacle began with Vivian's arrival, accompanied by Serafina and her family. Vivian, acting as a tour guide for Serafina, pointed out details. "Look how much Alara spent on this couch," she said, tracing the fabric. "Must be nice to have money to throw around." When Serafina genuinely complimented the flower arrangements, Vivian swiftly redirected, highlighting Serafina's own, more personal centerpieces. Corbin stumbled in later, already visibly intoxicated, and promptly propped his dirty shoes on Alara's expensive sofa. When Alara gently requested he remove them, Vivian leaped to his defense, accusing Alara of being too precious and emphasizing that family should feel comfortable. The early afternoon was a relentless barrage of such microaggressions. Every attempt Alara made to foster warmth was twisted into evidence of her flaws. She was trying too hard, spending too much, being too controlling. Kalen, watching in disbelief, later remarked that he had never witnessed a family work so diligently to diminish someone trying to create a joyful occasion. When they finally sat for dinner, Alara felt like a stranger in her own home. The meal was exquisite, restaurant quality, yet met with comparisons rather than compliments. Vivian launched into a detailed account of Serafina's homey and comfortable Thanksgiving feast from the previous year, subtly disparaging Alara's fancy approach. Uncle Alaric chimed in with tales of exclusive restaurants, making it clear Alara's food, while adequate, fell short of his discerning palate. The conversation predictably veered to careers. Alaric boasted about his latest million-dollar real estate deals. Then, the spotlight shifted to Serafina, Vivian leading the chorus of praise for her daughter's noble teaching profession. "Teaching," Vivian declared, her voice filled with a warmth Alara rarely heard directed at her, "is shaping young minds, making a real difference. Not everyone can say their work truly matters." The unspoken implication hung heavy. Alara's work in advertising, her creative campaigns, her problem-solving, all apparently lacked meaning. Alaric gravely endorsed the importance of recession-proof careers like teaching, unlike industries that come and go with trends. Alara, attempting to redirect, shared news of her promotion, the salary increase, and her new leadership role. Surely, concrete professional success would shift the tone. Instead, Vivian scoffed. "Well, it's easy to get promoted when you're young and don't have real responsibilities. Wait until you have a mortgage and children, then see how far that career gets you." Aunt Genevieve interjected with a saccharine smile. "In my day, work was about service, not personal fulfillment or big paychecks." The discussion then turned to family financial responsibilities, a treacherous path Alara walked straight into. Alaric pontificated on the duty of successful family members to help those struggling, recounting his own generosity. Serafina added her tales of assisting in-laws and contributing to emergencies. Then, Vivian set the trap. "It's funny how family responsibility works," she stated, her gaze fixed on Alara. "Some people understand that success means helping others, and some people think success means buying expensive furniture and showing off." Blood rushed to Alara's cheeks, but she tried to remain calm. She explained her quiet, consistent financial support. The regular transfers to Vivian, Corbin's covered car payments, the substantial short-term loan to Uncle Alaric's business, a loan he'd repaid but never publicly acknowledged. Instead of acknowledgement, the family closed ranks. Corbin, increasingly belligerent, sneered about fancy apartments and lectures on responsibility. Alaric questioned the significance of Alara's aid. Kaelin, witnessing this coordinated attack, tried to intercede, but his efforts were swiftly shut down. Alara watched his face morph from shock to anger, then to protective fury. The moment that shattered everything came as they lingered in the living room, sipping coffee and savoring Alara's homemade pumpkin pie. Vivian, perched in Alara's treasured armchair, held her coffee cup with a delicate precision that seemed to mock the crockery itself. Serafina beamed, showing photos of her children's school activities, bathed in the very admiration Alara had craved all evening. "Serafina," Vivian cooed, her voice thick with genuine affection, "you're such a wonderful mother. Your children are so lucky to have someone who puts their needs first, someone they can always count on." Alaric nodded gravely. That's what family is all about. Being there, being reliable, being dependable. Seeing a sliver of an opening, Alara ventured. "Kaelin and I have been talking about our future, maybe even marriage and children." She hoped this would show her commitment to family values beyond career success. Instead, Vivian's expression hardened. "Alara, honey," she began, her false sweetness a warning bell. "I think you need to be realistic. A nice apartment and a decent job don't mean you're ready for the responsibilities of marriage and family." Aunt Genevieve nodded sagely. "Financial stability is key before you take on obligations. You want to contribute, not be a drain." A familiar knot tightened in Alara's stomach, but she calmly asserted her stability, her career progression, her and Kaelin's mature consideration of their future. Then, Vivian delivered the crushing blow. Setting down her cup, she locked eyes with Alara, an expression of what she likely considered maternal wisdom on her face. "Honestly, Alara," Vivian stated with chilling conviction, "you can decorate this place and cook fancy meals, but you'll always be a burden to this family. We all know it." The silence was deafening. Even Corbin, for once, seemed stunned. Kaelin froze, his coffee cup midair, his face a storm of surprise, then anger, then blazing protective fury. But it was the others' reactions that truly broke Alara's heart. Alaric buried himself in his phone. Genevieve meticulously examined her fingernails. Serafina stared at her lap, refusing eye contact. Corbin, momentarily uncomfortable, remained silent. In that profound silence, something within Alara irrevocably shattered. But simultaneously, something new, fierce, and unyielding was born. Years of striving for love and acceptance, of questioning her worth, of feeling perpetually insufficient, it all coalesced into a blinding clarity. It was never about her. It was about them needing someone to be less, so they could feel more. Kaelin's hand found hers under the table, a silent anchor, giving her the strength to finally reclaim her voice. For the first time, Alara would speak her truth. Instead of crumbling, as she had countless times before, Alara felt a tectonic shift within. Years of swallowing insults, accepting criticism, begging for love that should have been freely given, had culminated in this moment. She was no longer their emotional punching bag. Slowly, deliberately, Alara rose. Her voice, calm and steady, surprised them more than any outburst. "You know what, Vivian?" Alara began, her gaze unwavering. "You're absolutely right. I have been a burden to this family, but not in the way you think." The room was so still, the cooling coffee in their cups seemed loud. "I've been a burden because I've spent my entire adult life desperately trying to earn approval from people who were never going to give it. I've been a burden because I kept believing that if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, gave enough, maybe you'd finally be proud. Vivian opened her mouth to interrupt, but Alara's raised hand stopped her. Let me finish. Because I'm going to say this once, and then our relationship is going to be very different. Alara's gaze swept across the room, meeting each startled face. Uncle Alaric, you want to talk about family responsibility? I've been sending Vivian $500 every month for the past 2 years to help with her expenses. That's $12,000, in case you're keeping track. Alaric's confident facade faltered, his eyes darting to Vivian, who stared at Alara with a mixture of shock and rage. Corbin, Alara continued, turning to her now surprisingly sober cousin, remember your car payments last winter? And again this spring? I covered both. $1,400 total. And that job training program you never finished? Another $800. Corbin stammered, but Alara wasn't done. And Uncle Alaric, when your accounts receivable were tied up in that big development project 18 months ago and you needed a short-term business loan, I gave you $15,000. You paid me back, eventually. But you never mentioned it to anyone else, did you? The silence now pulsed with their discomfort, but Alara was just beginning. Years of suppressed truth clamored for release. Serafina, Alara's voice hardened slightly as she turned to her cousin, whose eyes remained fixed on her lap. I've contributed to every birthday party, every school fundraiser, every family emergency for your children. When your husband was out of work, who do you think paid for their Christmas presents? It wasn't Santa. Alara's full focus returned to Vivian, her voice gaining strength with each word. And you, Vivian? You call me a burden. I've been supporting you financially while listening to you tell everyone how disappointed you are in me. I've been covering your expenses while you praise Corbin's potential and Serafina's noble career. Vivian finally found her voice, shrill with indignation. Alara, you're being dramatic. That's not how things are. No, Vivian, Alara stated firmly. That's exactly how things are. But here's what's going to change. I'm done apologizing for my success. I'm done trying to make myself smaller so you can feel bigger. I'm done being grateful for scraps of approval from people who should be celebrating my achievements. Kaylin squeezed her hand, his eyes shining with pride, bolstering her resolve. I worked my way through college while you complained about my textbooks. I built a career while you dismissed it as unimportant. I achieved financial stability while you predicted I would fail. And through all of that, I kept trying to win your approval with my time, my energy, and my money. Aunt Genevieve attempted to interject with a platitude about family harmony, but Alara cut her off. Aunt Genevieve, you've spent this entire evening making passive-aggressive comments about my home, my choices, my life. You want to talk about family harmony? Harmony doesn't require me to pretend your insults are compliments. The power dynamic in the room had irrevocably shifted. They visibly struggled, grasping for ways to restore the old order, the Alara who accepted mistreatment with a smile. What followed was the most raw, honest exchange Alara had ever had with her family, though calling it a conversation was generous. It was Alara, calm but unyielding, setting boundaries while they cycled through various tactics to regain control. Vivian's first approach was minimization. I was just trying to help you be realistic, she claimed, but her voice lacked conviction. No, Vivian, Alara calmly countered. Calling your daughter a burden in front of the entire family isn't helpful feedback. It's cruelty, and I'm done pretending it's anything else. Uncle Alaric tried a different tack, suggesting high emotions led to unintended words. We're all family here, Alara. Family forgives and moves forward. Alara met his gaze. You're absolutely right, Uncle Alaric. Family should forgive and move forward. So, I'm going to forgive all of you for years of treating me as if I were somehow defective for achieving success on my own terms. But moving forward is going to look very different than moving backward. Serafina finally spoke, her voice small and uncertain. Alara, maybe we all got carried away tonight. You know we care about you. Do you, Serafina? Alara asked, not unkindly, but with genuine curiosity. Because caring looks different than what I experienced tonight. Caring looks like celebrating someone's achievements instead of minimizing them. Caring looks like defending your family member when they're being attacked, not sitting silently while it happens. The room fell silent again, a new reality settling upon them. Ilara would no longer accept mistreatment and call it love. Kalen finally spoke, his voice controlled but edged with a rare anger. I've been sitting here all evening watching people who are supposed to love Ilara systematically tear down everything she's accomplished. I've watched her try over and over to share good news and have it dismissed or turned into criticism. What I saw tonight wasn't a family dinner. It was bullying. Vivian lashed out at Kalen. You don't understand our family dynamics. We've always been honest with each other. There's a difference between honesty and cruelty, Kalen replied steadily. And what happened here tonight was cruelty. A surge of gratitude washed over Ilara for Kalen's unwavering support. But this was her battle. Kalen's right, she affirmed. And this isn't his fight. This is about me finally standing up for myself after years of accepting unacceptable treatment. She drew a deep breath and delivered the boundaries she had meticulously formulated. Here's how things are going to work going forward. I will no longer attend family gatherings where I'm expected to be a verbal punching bag for everyone else's insecurities. I will no longer provide financial support to family members who show me no respect. And I will no longer apologize for my success or try to hide it to make others comfortable. The protests erupted immediately. Corbin whined about unfairness. Aunt Genevieve accused Ilara of letting pride destroy family bonds. Uncle Alaric tried to convince her she was making a mistake she would regret, but Vivian's reaction was the most telling. Instead of apology or acknowledgement, she doubled down. Fine, Ilara. If that's how you want to be, that's your choice. But don't come crying to us when your fancy life falls apart and you need your family. Her words confirmed Ilara's deepest suspicion. Vivian wasn't merely indifferent. She actively hoped for Ilara's failure, for her achievements challenged Vivian's carefully constructed narrative. I won't be coming to you if my life falls apart, Vivian, Ilara said quietly. But not because I'm proud or stubborn. Because I finally learned that real family builds you up instead of waiting for you to fall down. The evening concluded with an awkward, silent departure. No hugs, no promises, no attempts at forced pleasantries. They gathered their belongings with the quiet efficiency of people fleeing an uncomfortable scene. As they left, Kalen and Ilara sat amidst the untouched turkey, the undrunk wine, the abandoned desserts, the remnants of a shattered hope. But instead of devastation, Ilara felt something she hadn't known in years: peace. For the first time, she had refused to accept mistreatment and call it love. The ensuing weeks were a complex tapestry of relief, guilt, sadness, and ultimately, profound personal growth. The immediate aftermath was predictable. Calls and texts bombarded Ilara, each designed to pull her back into the old dynamic. Corbin, slurring even in the morning, left angry voicemails. Aunt Genevieve sent long, manipulative texts expressing disappointment and implying Ilara owed everyone an apology. Uncle Alaric, ever the businessman, lectured her on burning bridges and damaging professional relationships. Serafina's call was perhaps the most painful. She cried, wanting to fix things. But when Ilara asked if Vivian's burden comment was acceptable, Serafina couldn't say no, instead trying to explain everyone's perspectives. Vivian's response was a masterclass in deflection. First, blaming Ilara for ruining Thanksgiving. Then, accusing her of ungratefulness. Finally, threatening to cut her out of her life if Ilara didn't apologize and return to being the daughter she expected. What Vivian failed to grasp was that her threats had lost their power. Ilara had spent so many years fearing the loss of an approval Vivian rarely offered. The threat of withdrawal from an already emotionally unavailable person was no longer a devastating blow. Ilara responded to most of these contacts with silence, a tactic that utterly baffled her family, who expected either capitulation or escalating drama. Stepping back and focusing on her own life was a scenario they hadn't considered. Kalen was a pillar of support, though witnessing Ilara's family behavior was a stark, difficult revelation for him. He grew up with an abundance of genuine support. I keep trying to understand their motivations, he admitted one evening. But every explanation makes them look worse, not better. His words crystallized a crucial realization for Ilara. She had spent a lifetime trying to understand and excuse their behavior instead of simply accepting it at face value. They treated her poorly because they chose to. They minimized her achievements to fulfill some psychological need within themselves. They expected her to accept mistreatment because she always had. The turning point in Alara's healing came with therapy. She connected with Dr. Anya Sharma, a counselor specializing in family dynamics and childhood emotional trauma. Alara had long resisted therapy, believing it implied something wrong with her. Now, she understood it was about learning healthier ways to navigate relationships and set boundaries. Dr. Sharma illuminated patterns Alara had never seen, explaining how families sometimes designate a scapegoat, a role that serves the psychological needs of others, giving them someone to blame for their own insecurities. Through therapy, Alara recognized the immense energy she had spent managing others' emotions and reactions, always striving for approval, avoiding conflict, never asking what she truly wanted. The work was difficult, often painful, but profoundly liberating. Her worth, she realized, was not determined by her family's opinion. She began to recognize and celebrate her own achievements without external validation. Weeks after Thanksgiving, subtle shifts began at work. Her supervisor noted her newfound confidence. Colleagues sought her opinion more often, and her creative work blossomed. The changes in her professional life made her realize how deeply her family dynamics had impacted every facet of her existence. Growing up believing love had to be earned through achievement, and that even then, it would never be enough, created a constant hum of anxiety and self-doubt that permeated everything. As months passed, Alara intentionally cultivated healthy relationships, the contrast with her family dynamics starkly illuminating. Her bond with Kalen deepened as he witnessed her journey towards emotional health and firm boundaries. He saw her transform from someone who apologized for existing into someone who confidently expressed her needs. Their conversations grew more honest, their conflicts more productive, their connection stronger. "You're different now," he observed one evening. "Not different in your core, but in how you move through the world. You seem more present." He was right. She had spent so many years mentally bracing for criticism that she'd never been fully present for positive experiences. Now, she could enjoy accomplishments without bracing for them to be diminished, accept compliments without deflection, and make decisions based on her own desires, not fear of disapproval. At work, genuine friendships flourished. When Lyra, a coworker, invited her to a birthday party, Alara didn't spend days dissecting the invitation. When Orion, a teammate, sought her input, she confidently shared her ideas. Most surprisingly, lifelong friendships, previously kept at a safe distance, deepened. She had been so afraid of being a burden that she'd never allowed anyone to truly know or help her. As she became more open about her struggles and more willing to both offer and accept support, these friendships blossomed. Ren, a college friend, became an ardent supporter. "Alara," Ren said, after Alara finally shared her story, "I've watched you apologize for your success for years, downplay your achievements, constantly worry about whether people liked you. I always wondered where it came from. Now I understand." Having friends who genuinely celebrated her and supported her through difficulties showed Alara what she had been missing. These were people who didn't need her to be less for them to feel good about themselves. They simply enjoyed her company and wanted good things for her. 4 months after that fateful Thanksgiving, an unexpected call came from Serafina. This conversation felt different. Serafina's voice was subdued as she requested to meet for coffee. The following weekend, Serafina looked tired, uncertain. "I've been thinking a lot about Thanksgiving," she began. "And something you said keeps coming back to me. Caring looks like defending your family member when they're being attacked, not sitting silently while it happens." Alara waited. "You were right," Serafina admitted quietly. "I sat there and watched our mother call you a burden, and I said nothing. I told myself I was staying out of it, but really, I was being a coward. And I've been doing that for years." This admission unlocked a conversation they'd never had. Serafina spoke of her own struggles with Vivian's expectations, her own strategies of redirecting criticism towards Alara to protect herself. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to stand up to her the way you did," Serafina confessed. "But I want you to know I see what happened, and I'm sorry I didn't support you." This conversation wasn't an immediate restoration, but it was the fragile beginning of a different connection. For the first time, they spoke honestly about their family, shattering years of pretense. Serafina also shared an insight. In the weeks following Thanksgiving, Vivian had been spinning a narrative that Alara had become too good for the family, looking down on everyone because of her success, positioning herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter. This information was both painful and liberating. It confirmed that Vivian would never take responsibility for her actions, freeing Alara from the hope of an apology that would never come. It also validated her decision to step away, revealing Vivian's behavior as deliberate, not accidental. Simultaneously, Alara received pressure from extended family members who, having heard Vivian's version, urged reconciliation for the sake of the family. These conversations illuminated how family systems often work to maintain dysfunction, focusing on pressuring the scapegoat to fall back into line rather than addressing the root cause of the hurt. Alara learned to respond with simple, clear boundaries. I'm not willing to be in relationships where I'm consistently disrespected. If that changes, I'm open to conversation. Until then, I'm focusing on the relationships that are healthy and supportive. Most people didn't know how to respond to this, for it offered no argument, no problem to fix. Alara wasn't attacking, she was simply stating her truth. This period taught Alara a profound lesson. Healing doesn't require others to change or apologize. Healing comes from accepting reality and making choices that protect your own well-being. She couldn't make Vivian love her differently, but she could choose not to subject herself to harm. By Alara's next birthday, she was a transformed woman. Instead of dreading the day, she planned a celebration with people who genuinely cherished her. Kaylin orchestrated a surprise party with her closest friends and colleagues. The evening overflowed with laughter, genuine affection, and a celebration of who she was, not a critique of who she wasn't. As she looked around the room, she knew she had found her real family. The most powerful moment came when Orion raised a toast, bringing tears to her eyes. To Alara, who taught us all that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve. Thank you for showing us what real strength looks like. That night, no call or text came from Vivian. For the first time in her life, it didn't hurt. Instead, it was confirmation. She had made the right choice in creating boundaries that protected her peace and well-being. The woman who had spent years trying to earn approval was gone. In her place stood someone who understood her worth, was not up for debate. Her achievements needed no external validation. Her love didn't have to be earned through perfect behavior or endless sacrifice. Looking back, that Thanksgiving evening, though agonizing, was one of the best things that ever happened to Alara. Not because the confrontation was pleasant, but because it forced her to finally choose herself. It taught her that sometimes the most important word you can learn to say is no. No to mistreatment, no to manipulation, no to relationships that demand you shrink yourself for others' comfort. Family should lift you up, not tear you down. If they cannot celebrate your success, they do not deserve a front row seat to watch it unfold. Real love celebrates growth, supports dreams, and prioritizes your well-being over their convenience. If someone in your life consistently fails that test, perhaps it's time to ask if that relationship serves your highest good. The people who truly belong in your life will never ask you to be less than you are. They will challenge you to grow, support you through struggles, and celebrate your victories as if they were their own. Those are the relationships worth fighting for. Everything else is simply people you happen to share DNA with. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who couldn't celebrate your success? Have you found the courage to walk away from relationships that consistently left you feeling smaller than when you started? Share your story below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please engage with this content and consider sharing it with anyone who might need the reminder that they deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, even by family members. Remember, you are worthy of love and respect exactly as you are. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Until next time, be kind to yourself and choose relationships that choose you back.